Part 2. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan Sanbuletinji. Chapter 11. In October, the CBA training was in full swing, and the big-name foreign players from the United States quickly felt the so-called Chinese characteristics. Before the start of the season, the CBA must conduct a so-called physical fitness test. Domestic players who do not meet the standards cannot be registered. Although there are no hard requirements for foreign players, they are also required to participate. Although the foreign players don't understand the purpose of this physical fitness test, they still participate in order to get the dollars into their pockets in the future. For Angzi, this kind of physical fitness test is just a cut scene. It runs 15 meters 17 times 4 sets. Angzi ran for 51 seconds, which far exceeded the 65-second requirement, other bench presses, squats, and so on. It's a piece of cake. However, this has suffered for many domestic players. Originally, domestic training was very irregular. Many domestic players suddenly encountered this kind of high-intensity physical fitness test and immediately kneeled. Just turn back and run this item. Angzi Magic only Meng Lingyuan and Lu Wei had passed the teammates of the Dodo team, and then neither Meng Lingyuan nor Lu Wei could do the bench press and squat. So in fact, in the physical fitness test, the Dodo team played with other domestic players except Angzi. Fortunately, there is another Chinese characteristic, that is, those responsible for monitoring and testing can release water. So the so-called physical fitness test became a formality, and the Magic City team all passed the test. After the physical fitness test, the new CBA season will officially begin. The CBA opening game is on November 20th. The Magic City team will face the Shandong team in the opening game. On November 15th, news of the NBA suspension came again. The NBA player representatives and the Trade Union Executive Committee jointly decided to refuse to accept the new proposal of the management. The new round of consultations broke down again, which means that the new NBA season has been broken. It is impossible to start on time, and the shutdown has to continue. On November 20th, the Magic City team ushered in the Shandong team's challenge at the Pudong Yuanshan Arena at home. Unlike the Magic City team, this season's Shandong team also caught up with the trend of NBA suspension. They signed Alan Anderson, who has NBA strength. As a small foreign aide, the big foreign aide also introduced Othello Hunter, a power forward who once played for the NBA Eagles. With the addition of several powerful domestic aides such as Sui Ran, Ding Yan Yuhang, and Tao Hanlin, the Shandong team can be considered to be able to rank in strength. CBA is at the forefront. Before the game began, the head coach of the Magic City team, Daniel Panaggio, announced the starting lineup. Unexpectedly, Angzi entered the starting lineup. In addition to Angzi, the starting lineup was also point guard Lu Wei and shooting guard Ren Kelly, power forward Mike Harris and center Zhang Zhaoxu. After the development of the CBA over the past few years, many things are very similar to the NBA, such as the appearance ceremony. The DJ of the Pudong Yuanshan Arena chanted each player's name loudly. Mike Harris was the first to play, and the scene was cheered. When the live DJ called Angzi's name, the Yuanshan Arena also rang out a lot of cheers. Sound, after all, Angzi is a future NBA player, and his popularity in China is still very high. However, when he heard that Lu Wei, who was the last to play, received cheers and screams that were clearly a few decibels higher than him, Angzi still had to sigh. Even if he is a future NBA player, he is still inferior to the Magic, the meritorious veteran of the team. If you don't add the word future, you might be able to spell it out. How about it? Are you confident in this game? The game was about to begin. When Lu Wei was warming up, he stood beside Angzi, stretching his legs. Angzi also did a simple warm-up. He must have the confidence that Lu Wei said. Not only is confidence, but Angzi also has a goal that must be accomplished, preventing Alan Anderson from being killed. Why don't you have confidence? I'm not used to losing, so this game must be one. Angzi is not used to losing. This is true. For 4 years in the NCAA, he hasn't lost much at the University of Connecticut. Before Canada, Angzi played in domestic high school leagues, and with that body, he swept in various ways. And this time in CBA, Angzi set a high goal for himself. He is going to play in the NBA, and he will go after the NBA lockout is over, so Angzi decided that he wanted to prevent death on the way he met all the little foreign aid. At the beginning of the game, the Shandong team started with center Cao Zhenghua, power forward Wu Kei, small forward Alan Anderson, shooting guard Sui Ran and point guard Sun Ji. Zhang Zhaoxa relied on his height to win the ball, and the Magic City team began their first offense. Ren Kelly performed his first offense. In the CBA, many teams' offensive routines are singles with unlimited foreign aid, and the Mordu team is no exception. So Ren Kelly waved to everyone to pull away. Angzi also ran to the bottom corner. Make room for singles for Ren Kelly. Ren Kelly's personal ability is quite outstanding in the CBA. After all, not everyone has the defensive ability of Angzi. Facing Sui Ran's defense, Ren Kelly easily throws off the defender through a pick and roll, and then one step later. Emergency stop jumper, 2 points hit. Then, the Shandong team attacked. Alan Anderson took the ball and faced Angzi's single defense. The CCTV commentator focused on Alan Anderson, a big-name foreign player with NBA strength. Alan Anderson, who played for the Charlotte Bobcats in the NBA, played in Europe before being signed by the Shandong team. Last season playing for Barcelona, he was the MVP of the UEFA Champions League last season, and his background is quite big. For Alan Anderson, Angzi does not know the CCTV commentary as detailed, but Angzi knows Alan Anderson's technical characteristics, strong breakthrough ability, average shooting, and good at sports goals. This is a completely different type of foreign aid from Ren Kelly. Knowing the technical characteristics of Alan Anderson, Angzi naturally understands how to defend. Throughout the defensive round, Angzi kept a distance from Alan Anderson to prevent Alan Anderson from breaking through. However, Angzi's defense did not make Anderson feel any different. Even Angzi deliberately kept the distance and made Alan Anderson feel that the Chinese who was facing him is an amateur defensive player. After all, Alan Anderson is a general shooting, but it is not completely without shooting. Alan Anderson subconsciously underestimated Angzi. He felt that this Chinese was no different from other Chinese, and perhaps the defense was even worse. So I didn't care. Alan Anderson directly chose to break through. This is his best way to score. One step forward, Alan Anderson quickly accelerated his speed and wanted to directly defeat Angzi's defense with speed. But how could Angzi, who had long reserved her body space, be caught like this? He is not the kind of defender who is just stepped past. When Alan Anderson rushed up, Angzi also hurriedly followed. Soon, Alan Anderson, who rushed to the free throw line one step, discovered that this Chinese player who seemed nothing special had been sticking to him. It was uncomfortable for Alan Anderson to be posted, especially when he entered his attack range. Alan Anderson discovered that he actually didn't get a little shot space. This Chinese defender he looked down upon was so good. His right arm was tightly against his body, his left arm was raised high, not giving himself a little room to shoot, and even used his height to block his vision. Let yourself not see the position of the basket at all. Alan Anderson was helpless. He had to lean on Angzi, turned around, and threw the basketball to the basket. This unsure shot was undoubtedly missed, and Angzi took the opportunity to jump and grab the rebound. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan San Buletinji. Chapter 12. Alan Anderson missed the first goal. An 11 defended the ball well. It deserves to be the player selected by the Spurs this year. A domestic sports live website is also broadcasting the game. As a guest, the director Zhang appeared. It is much more professional than the previous CCTV commentary, and there is no too much praise for Alan Anderson, because director Zhang knows that Angzi defending Alan Anderson is not a good stubble. It should be said that the highlight of this game, the live sports website, is Angzi versus Alan Anderson. In their view, Angzi, who was just selected by the Spurs, almost represents the highest level of Chinese basketball outside, and this level is comparable to that of the European League. MVP, what will be the result? So this game must be full of spectacles. Before the game, the guest director Zhang always believed that Angzi was better than Alan Anderson, and the host of this game, K-Fan, believed that Alan Anderson was a bit stronger. Both sides have their own opinions. Director Zhang always believes that players who can be selected by the NBA are already among the top in Europe in a certain sense. Moreover, Angzi is still a defensive player. In terms of type, it is obviously more suitable for the NBA. And Fan believes that Alan Anderson was the MVP of the UEFA Champions League last season. From this point of view, it is not just the top level in Europe. However, on the first goal, Alan Anderson was defended by Angzi. Director Zhang praised him a lot, but Fan did not ignore this point because of his position before the game. He carefully analyzed Angzi's defense, just like according to director Zhang, Angzi was very smart in defending this ball. From the beginning to the end, Angzi has been using his physical advantage, including using his strength advantage to withstand Alan Anderson, and later using his height advantage to block Alan Anderson. Deserves to be a perimeter player who relies on defense to become a monk. On the field, the game has been going on, and it is the turn of the Magic to attack. In the offensive round, Angzi didn't have much performance. The two foreign players were the highlight of the offense, and even Lu Wei had a higher role than Angzi. For this ball, Lu Wei cooperated with Mike Harris on the inside. A pick and roll close to the penalty area. After the pick and roll, Lu Wei attracted the attention of the Shandong team's defense, and then suddenly passed the ball to Mike Harris, who blocked Mike. Harris made a mid-range shot and made a successful hit. 4:0. Mike Harris is in the middle distance. He and Lu Wei cooperate very well, Fan yelled, and the next director Zhang explained, of course, Mike Harris is a foreign aide for CBA, and have more cooperation with Lu Wei. Then came the Shandong team's offense. Angzi once again posted Alan Anderson. This last season's European MVP was very uncomfortable when facing Angzi's defense. This time Shandong team's point guard Sun Ji was in charge. Angzi used his own knack of sugar candy and entangled Alan Anderson tightly. He was even harder than defending Ren Kelly in the last team training match. Alan Anderson even felt that it was difficult to even run, let alone pick up. The ball shot off. So for the second offense of the Shandong team, when the only foreign player on the field was locked by Angzi, the other four domestic players panicked. They hadn't practiced any offensive routines, and often they asked foreign players to bring them. Call taxi. The panicked Shandong team hurried to a wave of offensive cooperation. Inside, Cao Zhenghua pulled out and made a pick and roll for Sui Ran. Sui Ran made a long-range jumper, but he didn't make it directly. Instead, they switched to the Magic City team to attack, and Ren Kelly held the ball. The Shandong team was already behind 0:4, so they strongly wanted to defend the ball. 3 or 5 people focused their defensive attention on Ren Kelly, but they missed Angzi. Angzi at the bottom corner is unguarded. He received a three-pointer from Ren Kelly. It was scored. Perfect, the young man Fan is so passionate. Alan Anderson missed someone. He missed it and stayed in the bottom corner. Angzi. With the three-pointer, an 11 happily shook his hand. In the first game of the CBA, an 11 still didn't dare to treat himself as a star player, so he stayed in the bottom corner and played a perfect role as a role player. Character 7:0. The Shandong team finally couldn't help it. Less than 2 minutes into the game, the Shandong team coach couldn't help calling the first timeout. Othello Hunter was injured, so this game was put on the bench by the Shandong coach. I originally thought that there was Alan Anderson, the European MVP, and it was easy to deal with the Magic City team that did not strengthen this season. The result was a blow in the beginning. However, the head coach of the Shandong team is a Chinese coach. He didn't dare to spray Alan Anderson. He paused, but directly cursed Sui ran these domestic players, Xiao Sui, Cao Zhenghua and Sun Ji, look at it. What are you playing? Alan will not be able to attack if you don't participate in the attack. Also, can the defense be done well? If you can't do well, you should not play. The head coach of the Shandong team also understands the problem. He found that Alan Anderson seemed to be defensive by Angzi, but the coach, who had never seen the world, still felt that Alan Anderson was strong. Those who are stronger than Angzi, are defended by Angzi, in the final analysis, because they do not have another foreign aid present, they can't bear the pressure of Wei for Alan Anderson. At the end of the timeout, he let Othello Hunter play again, hoping to rely on Alan Anderson and Othello Hunter's internal and external cooperation to open up the situation. After the timeout, the game restarted, and Alan Anderson took the ball again. Angzi posted it again. Alan Anderson, who had not spoken for the first 2 rounds, finally couldn't help it this time. I was careless about the first 2 goals. I will make you pay for this one. Ruthless words were just released. Angzi smiled. The price? The price is that you want to eat me a hot pot next. Alan Anderson threw a disdainful expression, and did not argue with an 11 again. A step away from Angzi, Alan Anderson carefully dribbled the ball, and then suddenly took a step forward, without stopping, followed by a crotch dribble. Then in the next second, the step that I took was taken back all at once. Cross over. An 11 smiled. He knew that Alan Anderson had really tried his best now, and he even took out the things at the bottom of the box. As an American player, Alan Anderson was born on the street, and he still knows how to cross over, but he doesn't use it much after playing professionally. This time, in order to win Angzi, this kind of street heads-up routine was used. After 2 consecutive changes, an 11 was unmoved. He stared at Alan Anderson's shoulder closely, observing Alan Anderson's center of gravity. Alan Anderson failed to deceive Angzi by changing directions twice in a row. In the end, he was unwilling to pass the ball. In desperation, he could only force a difficult shot. An 11, who has been observing Alan Anderson, has long discovered that Alan Anderson wants to make a strong shot. The extremely fast-reacting Angzi immediately followed Alan Anderson to jump and directly blocked the ball. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 13. Good shot. This block. Angzi is very good at defending. Alan Anderson has been eaten to death by him. It seems that the result of this game is about to come out. On the live sports website, both Mentor Zhang and K-Fan were pleasantly surprised by Angzi's block. After blocking the shot, an 11 was very calm. He suddenly discovered that Alan Anderson was too defensive. What are the advantages of Alan Anderson? It's a breakthrough, but the speed and strength that Alan Anderson used to bully domestic players are not enough in front of Angzi, and Alan Anderson's change of direction is even more ugly to make Angzi want to laugh. This change, what and what? After playing in the NCAA for 4 years, Angzi has also encountered a lot of change masters, such as Angzi's college teammate Kemba Walker, and Angzi's best at changing directions is this year's champion Kelly Irving. Even Kelly Irving's change Xiang Angzi can be guarded, not to mention Alan Anderson's crappy change of direction. Next, as director Zhang and Fan said, Angzi killed Alan Anderson. In Angzi's hands, Alan Anderson failed consecutive offensives and missed shots. The Magic City team slowly expanded the lead. When a small foreign player of a CBA team is killed and the big foreign player is still injured, it is difficult to beat a CBA team with a large and small foreign player that can perform normally. In the first half, Angzi gave full play to his defensive abilities. In addition, from time to time, he made an open three-pointer. After half the game, Angzi scored 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 steals and 2 blocks. His performance was extremely versatile. The score of the two teams also became 56-27. The Mordu team led the Shandong team by 29 points, and the game was almost over. "Don't watch this game, it's not interesting." On the sidelines, Dao, who had been watching the game, smiled openly, but after watching half of the game, he shouted boringly, "The game is too suspenseful, it is completely the magical team sling trip." "Lao Zhang, do you think you can directly play in the NBA with Angzi's strength?" Dao asked Zhang Mingji as he left the channel. Zhang Mingji smiled bitterly, "You ask me about this, you are playing basketball, you should know better than me." Dao smiled and nodded, "From the first half, playing the NBA is no problem. Angzi can completely defend against Alan Anderson, the European MVP, which shows that he has a defensive foothold in the NBA." The two walked outside the arena. Halfway through, Dao seemed to suddenly remember something. "By the way, I heard that the Spurs sent a scout to China." "Yes, the Spurs are said to still attach great importance to Angzi, and they sent a scout to see Angzi's situation." "Then did the scout come to see the game today?" "It seems to be here. I took a look. There seems to be a few gringos in the arena, maybe one of them." Hearing this, Dao sighed, "Oh, it seems that Angzi is about to return to the United States. As far as I know, the lockout is almost over. After the NBA Players Union announced that it will no longer show up, those big-name players seem to be ready to compromise." Zhang Mingji was also silent. Angzi could not play a few games and left. This is not good news for the Magic City team, but it is good news for the entire Chinese basketball team. In the arena, at the beginning of the second half of the game, the Mordu team, which was relieved of pressure, played randomly like this. Even Angzi had several chances to attack with the ball and scored all of them. The Shandong team also quickly gave up the game that had no suspense for a long time. At the end of the game, the two teams tacitly controlled the difference within 30 points. In the first game of the season, the Mordu team won a big victory 108-81. And Angzi also made 9 of 15 shots and 6 of 9 three-pointers, scoring 24 points, plus 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 steals, and 4 blocks to become the best in the game. If it weren't for the 2 three-pointers that Angzi had thrown into a 2-pointer that would inevitably be missed, maybe Angzi would have scored 30 points. On the defensive end, Angzi's Shandong team's Alan Anderson made 2 of 15 shots in the entire game and only scored 5 points. A dignified UEFA Champions League MVP has become a pit. I have to say that in the CBA first game, Angzi performed amazingly, which directly let many people see what a Chinese outside player should be selected by the NBA. After the game, Angzi went from the player channel to the locker room and received a lot of cheers on the way. It can be said that in this battle, Angzi not only conquered teammates and conquered Chinese basketball, but also conquered the fans. Angzi, who returned to the locker room, quickly learned of the sensational events that occurred on the day of the CBA opening game, and big-name foreign aides have been working hard. Wilson Chandler scored 43 points, 22 rebounds, 4 assists and 3 steals in the game between Guangzhou and Tianjin. J.R. Smith scored 41 points and 9 rebounds in the match between Zhejiang and Zhejiang. Aaron of Guangdong Province Brooks scored 27 points, 6 rebounds and 10 assists in the game against Shenzhen. In this way, as a returnee player, Angzi scored 24 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 steals and 4 blocks, but the headlines of the major media in the CBA the next day were still robbed by these big-name foreign aides. Explosion. The suspension of the NBA suddenly turned the CBA game into a foreign players' one-man show. In the past few years, the CBA has not seen such a big explosion of foreign aid data, such as J.R. Smith, Wilson Chandler, and Ariel. Players like Long Brooks are all players who can start in the NBA, and their strength should not be underestimated. It should be said that CBA has never received this level of foreign aid, and although Angzi defended Alan Anderson is only a European MVP. In a sense, he and J.R. Smith are still incomparable. In terms of hard power, J.R. Smith is obviously stronger. In this way, although the Shandong team was won by a big score, the Magic City team is still quite calm. Unlike Guangxia, East Guangdong, and Zhejiang, these three teams are surrounded by the media and the training hall is crowded. Reporters who want to interview three big-name foreign aides. In this calm atmosphere, the Magic City team ushered in their second game. They ushered in the Jilin team with three foreign aides: Jordanian defender Osama Daglish, American veteran center Jamil Folkin, and the same is the NBA level Kadir Martin. This game is still the home game of the Magic City. Magic City team won the game. Angzi defended Kadir Martin, a marginal man in the NBA, plus Mike Harry. With a super data of 28 points and 22 rebounds, the Magic City team's victory was quite easy. In this battle, Angzi's data is slightly worse. The whole game only shot 7 3-pointers, hit 5 of them, scored 15 points, 3 rebounds, 5 steals and 3 blocks. The domestic media also paid attention to Angzi's performance in 2 consecutive games. Tencent Sports wrote that Angzi's strong individual defense ability in these 2 games, coupled with a good 3-point ability, will be the outside hope of Chinese basketball in the future. The comment only regards Angzi as an outside hope for China's basketball in the future, without mentioning the NBA. If Tencent Sports avoided talking about Angzi's NBA prospects, the basketball pioneer had positively commented on Angzi's NBA prospects. Basketball Vanguard believes that in these 2 CBA games, Angzi only showed his defensive ability and 3-point ability, but did not show his NBA potential. Perhaps Angzi did not have the strength to establish a foothold in the NBA. The Basketball Vanguard even compared Angzi with Yao Ming and UAE. Before going to the NBA to play, Yao Ming had completely dominated the CBA, and UAE also had an average of 20-10 per game before participating in the NBA draft, achieved 3 consecutive championships. On the other hand, Angzi's CBA first game was still eye-catching. In the second game, Angzi acted like a role player. How can such a performance enter the NBA? Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-San Buletinji. Chapter 14. Angzi is not the kind of player who doesn't pay attention to the media. On the contrary, he likes to read the comments of the media about him after the game. In the 4 years of NCAA, the University of Kang's newspaper is a must-read after every game in Angzi, especially the newspaper that won the championship this year. Angzi has kept it until now, because that report specifically mentioned Angzi's contribution in the NCAA finals defensively killed Shelvin Mark, the perimeter core of Butler University. But in the recent period, Angzi is not in the mood to read the newspaper, because there is either no news about him in the newspaper, or it is a bad news about him. Angzi was very helpless. He obviously performed well, but this group of domestic reporters just couldn't see it. Of course, Angzi also understands that this group of domestic reporters are comparing themselves with the super foreign players of J.R. Smith. There is a saying that there is no harm if there is no comparison. When J.R. Smith scored 40 points and 50 in every CBA game. However, when Angzi was still 10 to 20 minutes, the gap seemed very big. Under this kind of comparison, Angzi's performance seems to be much worse, and it seems that it is not up to the NBA standard. Angzi is still quite speechless for this kind of comparison between the media. Angzi understands that he is not the same type as J.R. Smith, he is the defensive type, and he is the type that cannot be a star. Simple data comparison is unfair, only direct dialogue can see Angzi's true strength. Fortunately, This opportunity to prove himself is now in sight. After playing Jilin, the next opponent of the Magic City team is Zhejiang. He is about to face J.R. Smith, and Angzi also understands that this is his opportunity to prove himself. J.R. Smith's current state is extremely hot. After scoring 41 points and 9 rebounds against Zhejiang in the first game, J.R. Smith scored 57 points and 11 rebounds against the Shugang team, completely defeating the CBA team's defense. It seems that next J.R. Smith's mission is to break various CBA scoring records. This is different from another super foreign aide, Wilson Chandler. Wilson Chandler's 2 consecutive games are 40+ points and 20+ rebounds. Obviously Wilson Chandler is going all around. Aaron Brooks' performance was worse than those of the two. After 27 points, 6 rebounds and 10 assists in the first game, Bud scored 22 points, 7 rebounds and 11 assists in the second game, because the team has the super internal aid of Arab League. With the existence of, Ziobu doesn't need to get a lot of points by himself. Defending J.R. Smith's scoring frenzy became Angzi's only goal in the next game. On the evening of November 24, the Magic City team departed from Magic City and rushed to Westlake City to prepare for the next day's game. And on that evening, news suddenly came out from the United States that the negotiations between NBA player representatives and the league have made significant progress, and the final results will be announced on the evening of November 25. This news suddenly affected Angzi's heart, and the suspension was finally about to be announced. Ended. The Magic City team arrived in Westlake City and stayed at the Sheraton Hotel in the city center. Angzi contacted Ivo Clark, who is now in the United States, in the hotel room. So are the players actually negotiating with the league now? Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. Yes, these big-name stars have already felt the impact of the suspension of the league on their income, so now I hope to reach an agreement with the league as soon as possible to resume the game as soon as possible. In the United States, Ivo Clark has heard a lot of news, and now it is almost certain that the negotiations between the league and the player representatives on the night of November 25 will definitely produce a good result, and it is very likely that the suspension will end. That way, the next game is likely to be the last CBA game in Angzi. Since the start of the league, the team has won 2 consecutive victories. In this game, the Magic City team met their biggest opponent since the start of the game, Zhejiang team. The team owner Yao Ming also came to Zihua City to supervise the battle. At 9 o'clock in the evening, Dao knocked on the door of Angzi's room. Angzi just finished communicating with Ivo Clark. After Yao Ming came, he looked in the room and asked, "How do you feel about the intensity of CBA?" "It's okay, it feels worse than NCAA." Angzi told the truth. In terms of league strength, NCAA is even comparable to NBA. In terms of schedule alone, it is better than NBA, and it is definitely better than CBA. It's a pity, you won't be able to play for long, have you heard? The NBA lockout is about to end. Angzi nodded. He was calm, because he didn't understand why Dao wanted to talk to himself at this time. Seeing that Angzi didn't speak, Yao Ming smiled and continued, "I've watched the first 2 games. You should be able to play the NBA directly, and maybe you don't know that the Spurs sent the ball in these 2 games it came." Angzi was taken aback. Did the Spurs send scouts? The Spurs sent scouts over and greeted the Magic City in advance. I watched the first 2 games on the spot. Based on your performance in these 2 games, the Spurs should be satisfied. They will come soon. I signed you, I came to you, not to keep you or anything. I also love Chinese basketball. Although I have retired now, I still want to see the progress of Chinese basketball, so I come to you in preparation, give you some of my things in the NBA. Have something to give to me?" Angzi suddenly became a little silent. Originally, he thought that Yao Ming, like the leaders of those sports bureaus and CBA bosses, wanted to keep himself for a season, but he didn't expect this to be the case. "My agent team, and my training team in the United States, I don't have access to these. Yao Ming suddenly felt a little confused, but he continued, originally, I wanted the broker team turned into my business team, but now think about it, they may not be able to do business things, let them do their jobs. As for the training team, I borrowed from you. When will you wait? If you have money, you can change it yourself, and then change it to suit you. I only hope that you can develop well in the United States, and don't come back if you develop well. Thank you. After a long time, an 11 said these two words, and he felt that at this moment, no matter what he said was not as real as these two words. Yao Ming's agent team is indeed what Angzi urgently needs now. In fact, Angzi's deficiencies can be seen in many aspects. For example, the domestic media reports on Angzi too little and the reports are biased. In fact, the broker team is unprofessional, or there is simply no broker in this area. As a Chinese player who is about to join the NBA, he has little exposure in China. This is also related to the lack of publicity of the agent team. As for the training team, it is actually the few people Angzi used during the CBA off-season. Angzi thinks it is very good. Although the trainers were originally responsible for center training, they are still very helpful to Angzi. There is no money in Angzi. Before the replacement, it is still very good to use. Actually, Angzi is very grateful for Yao's ability to not stop him from going to the NBA. Anyone with a discerning eye can see Angzi's improvement to the Magic City team. If you stay in Angzi for a season, you may be able to get all the CBA champions this season. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-San Buletinji. Chapter 15. On the afternoon of November 25, the Magic City team will challenge the Zhejiang team on the road. The Zhejiang team this season is extremely eye-catching. First, it recruited NBA New Jersey Nets power forward Josh Boone, and then took down the famous NBA drafter J.R. Smith, plus Zhang Chunjun and Ding Junhui. For the domestic players sent, the goal of the Zhejiang team this year is ready to come out, that is, the CBA champion. In the first two games, the Zhejiang team won the game with J.R. Smith's continuous high scores and highlights. The data has been quite broken. Before this game met Angzi, J.R. Smith received a warning from compatriot Alan Anderson. This Magic City team number 7 has a very strong defense. But J.R. Smith didn't take it to heart. He came to China to play 2 games. J.R. Smith has regarded this league as an amateur league, and has a strong defense. How strong can it be? You can get 30 or 40 points at will. Do your best. Who can guard yourself? About 12,000 spectators came to the Zhejiang home court today. The arena is already full, and the current Zhejiang football market has become extremely popular because of J.R. Smith. After Yao Ming's reminder, Angzi specially observed the surroundings of the arena after entering the field. Sure enough, he saw a few foreigners in the front corner. Angzi guessed that there might be scouts sent by the Spurs. The game started quickly, and the Magic City team was still the same starter, with point guard Lu Wei, shooting guard Ren Kelly, small forward Angzi, power forward Mike Harris and center Zhang Zhaoxu. This set of debuts should be the first few starters in the CBA. Yes, but unfortunately Angzi is about to leave. In Zhejiang, point guard Cao Fei, shooting guard J.R. Smith, small forward Ding Junhui, power forward Zhang Chunjun, center Josh Boone. Zhejiang's starter is also very strong, especially J.R. Smith is 2 grades better than Ren Kelly, Josh Boone is about the same as Mike Harris, and Cao Fei, Ding Junhui and Zhang Chunjun are worse than Lu Wei and Zhang Zhaoxu. In general, Zhejiang is relying on J.R. Smith to forcibly improve the team's combat effectiveness. Before the game started, Ren Kelly pitifully approached an 11, and, that J.R. Smith, leave it to you, okay. Angzi laughed, haha, Ren, this is not like you, but you don't say I have to deal with that J.R. Smith. That is my goal. Zhejiang team vs Magic City, the strongest scoring foreign aid J.R. Smith vs. Angzi, the strongest domestically produced shield. The attention of this game is quite high. In the days without NBA, CBA has become the most concerned basketball game in China. Therefore, the focus of the match CCTV must be broadcast live. They invited CCTV's golden partner Zhang Gui and Yu Jie to explain the game. Director Zhang, I don't know how you look at this game. It is said that this game is the strongest domestic shield against the strongest foreign aid. I have never watched Angzi play. Is this Angzi really that strong? Yu Jie be the first to open the topic. Director Zhang had watched the game where Angzi played Alan Anderson, so he was prepared for Yu Jie's question. Angzi's defense is really strong. He came back from the NCAA, and he was defensive in the NCAA. Many of the defensive players are no worse than J.R. Smith. For example, last season's NBA regular season MVP Derrick Rose was the same as Angzi. Angzi defended him, so in terms of pure defensive strength, Angzi can bear this title. If Angzi knew what Director Zhang said about him, perhaps Angzi himself would feel ashamed. In the first season of the NCAA, he did play against Rose, but the result of the match was that he was completely blown up. At that time, Angzi was just a defender who could only use his body. For a point guard like Rose, Angzi really couldn't deal with it at that time. So Director Zhang is a little bit Angzi. At the beginning of the game, Angzi faced J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith was very disdainful of Angzi taking the initiative to change defenses to defend himself. Although he was warned by Alan Anderson before the game, how could J.R. Smith pay attention to a Chinese? In the Zhejiang team's first offense, J.R. Smith unceremoniously asked for the ball. In J.R. Smith's eyes, these Chinese players in the CBA are a group of rookies. It would be a waste to give them an offensive opportunity. Each ball comes by itself, and the efficiency may be higher. J.R. Smith faced Angzi's first ball. He calmly dribbled the ball outside the three-point line, observing Angzi's defense. Although he didn't put Angzi in his eyes, J.R. Smith was really serious when it came to the offense, dribbling the ball slowly, looking for Angzi's defensive flaws. And Angzi looks like a big enemy. J.R. Smith is the strongest opponent he has encountered in the CBA. He has a strong impact and has a strong ability to finish the basket. What is more terrifying is that J.R. Smith's the three-point ability can be called the top level, and it's not something that people can prevent from the wind. Such an offensive all-around player is naturally a great test for the defensive players. With Angzi's defensive ability, it is also difficult to completely limit J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith finally started to attack. After observing for a few seconds, he did not find Angzi's defensive flaws, so he decided to test Angzi's defense. When he saw J.R. Smith dribbling the ball forward, Angzi immediately posted it. He knew that he couldn't give J.R. Smith too much space for the dribbling shooter, otherwise his opponent would definitely use those dribbling hands to educate himself. J.R. Smith soon felt that he had hit a wall. Angzi had a lot of power, and J.R. Smith at the top was very uncomfortable. He could not rush in, so he had to stop and continue to dribble. Angzi quickly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that as long as he could prevent J.R. Smith's breakthrough, he would be able to make the opponent fall into the wave. Just as Angzi breathed a sigh of relief, J.R. Smith suddenly dashed forward. When Angzi was hurriedly besieged, J.R. Smith suddenly turned his back, and then moved a step away from Angzi, followed by a backward lean. The action was so fast that Angzi had not had time to react when he saw that J.R. Smith had leaped high and made a big shot backwards. This kind of backwards is not something Angzi can reach at all. He can't cover or interfere. J.R. Smith jumps very high. After leaning back, he quickly aims at the basket and shoots. Angzi can only watch J.R. Smith helplessly. Shot. With the sound of, J.R. Smith scored his first goal. Angzi held his head in annoyance. He was careless about the ball. J.R. Smith moved too fast. J.R. Smith's back, scored, and Ang could not defend this goal. It seems that J.R. Smith's offensive power is indeed very strong. Yes, Ang has defended this ball very well, but J.R. Smith moved too fast, Ang couldn't react. On the commentary stage, director Jong and Yujia discussed J.R. Smith's ball. Indeed, as the two said, J.R. Smith's ball is too strong, the action is so fast, and such a backwards show. Even Ang couldn't react to his extremely strong physical fitness. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-san Buletinji. Chapter 16. Magic City's offense. The dexterous Ren Kelly scored 2 points for the Magic City team with a sudden stop jumper. The Magic City team is still very stable on the offensive end. After Ang joined, the Magic City team built an offensive system dominated by Lu Wei, Ren Kelly, and Mike Harris, and a defensive system dominated by Ang and Zhang Zheoxu. This is why the Magic City team in the first 2 games the reason for the big win. Returning to the defensive end, Ang once again faced J.R. Smith. The last ball J.R. Smith suddenly leaned back and hit Ang by surprise. With this ball, Ang got serious. He knew that J.R. Smith was an offensive killer in the NBA. Players, coming to the CBA, they should not be underestimated. The sudden fall back just now is a lesson for Ang. In the CBA, he can use many technical moves that J.R. Smith can't use in the NBA. After halftime, an 11 posted it. An 11 knew that he had to change his defense against J.R. Smith. The previous method obviously didn't work. Ang has to stick to J.R. Smith. Ang feels that he can no longer give J.R. Smith space. Anyway, his speed is very fast. I am not afraid of J.R. Smith's breakthrough, sticking to J.R. Smith, and not giving him a little space. Only this way of defense can successfully defend J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith faced Ang's second goal. He planned to repeat the same trick. However, through the first goal, J.R. Smith also learned of Ang's strength, so J.R. Smith seemed to be very stable on this one. He called the insider Zhang Chunjun and asked him to make myself a pick and roll. And Ang saw Zhang Chunjun pulled out, and the situation became clear at once. He quickly took a step back, preparing to defend the breakthrough after J.R. Smith's pick and roll. But the problem appeared. The moment Ang retreated, J.R. Smith suddenly took off and shot. Ang's retreat gave J.R. Smith a shot of space. J.R. Smith did not hesitate to take a shot. Ang immediately rushed over, but it was too late. The basketball had left J.R. Smith's hand and flew to the basket. 3 points, in. An 11 took a step back with this goal, because he saw Zhang Chunjun pull out to make a pick and roll, but he didn't expect J.R. Smith to directly use this opportunity to shoot a 3-pointer. Yes, Xiaoan still lacks experience in this ball. Seeing the 3-pointer into the net, Ang was also very helpless. This is all right. J.R. Smith scored 2 goals in a row. This feels like this. It will be more difficult to defend next, but these 2 consecutive goals have taught Ang a lesson. Ang knows next, no matter what action J.R. Smith makes, he has to stick to his opponent. These 2 goals have clearly shown that J.R. Smith is the scorer who has a little space to shoot. The third offense of the Zhejiang team, J.R. Smith, who scored the first 2 goals, felt himself in a hot state and asked for the ball again. Ang posted it. J.R. Smith was holding the ball with his back on his back. Seeing that Ang was still reluctant to take care of himself, he blurted out a trash talk, "Boy, you are all blown up by me, do you still want to be insulted?" Ang was cold and unmoved. He must have understood what J.R. Smith said, but he knew that at this moment, whatever he said would fall into J.R. Smith's trap and fall into endless trash talk. So now, what Ang has to do is to ignore J.R. Smith, and then use actions to tell his opponents who is insulting himself. This time, J.R. Smith was stuck tightly by Angzi, and there was not even a trace of space. J.R. Smith looked at the basket with his back. At this time, calling a pick and roll screen is actually the best. But the first two hits made J.R. Smith feel that his state is hot and he can teach Angzi to be a man. So without hesitation, J.R. Smith dribbled the ball and turned around again, and after leaving Angzi's arms, he immediately rushed to the penalty area with the ball. Naturally Angzi won't be careless this time. He stuck to J.R. from beginning to end. When J.R. Smith broke through with the ball, Angzi directly pushed it up, and a strong force made J.R. Smith unable to stop. As soon as he stopped, J.R. Smith immediately turned around again. He felt that he couldn't hold back. The Chinese seemed to understand how to defend himself, so after turning around, J.R. Smith turned back again. But this time, Angzi defended well. When J.R. Smith turned around, he was pushed by Angzi. The movement was a little deformed. When he leaned back, the angle was not right. J.R. Smith could only rely on the flexibility of his body. Adjust your posture in the air, and then shoot. Reluctantly, the basketball was a bit crooked. As expected by Angzi, J.R. Smith hit the iron this time. Dang, the basketball bounced out of the frame. Zhang Xiaoxu, relying on his height advantage, successfully scored the rebound. J.R. Smith came back again, this time he hit the iron. Angzi defended very well, he stubbornly withstood J.R., this time J.R. Smith's shot was deformed. The Magic City team quickly attacked. After Mike Harris scored a mid-range shot, J.R. Smith made a comeback. The unwilling J.R. yelled to his teammates, "Give me the ball and watch me take over the game." Facing Angzi's defense again, J.R. Smith waved to the inside line, "Zhang, give me a pick and roll." Professional basketball is not heads up. J.R. Smith knows this too. This time, Zhang Chunjun pulled out the pick and roll screen. Angzi still stuck to J.R., there was no looseness. When Zhang Chunjun blocked Angzi and J.R. Smith was about to leave with the ball, Angzi quickly retreated and escaped from the obstacle set by Zhang Chunjun, then accelerated sharply and rushed towards J.R. Smith. Before J.R. Smith rushed out a few steps, Angzi caught up with J.R. Smith with his faster pace. Then J.R. Smith discovered that even if he called the pick and roll screen, he was still a tragedy, because this Angzi was like a brown candy, completely stuck to himself. Next, Angzi seemed to have found a way to defend J.R. Smith and kept defending closely. No matter what kind of technical action J.R. Smith used to shoot, Angzi could always interfere with the deformation of J.R. Smith's movements, and then shot and hit the iron. Soon the game entered the familiar rhythm of the Magic City. An 11 locked the opponent's arrow, and the Magic City's double 4-8 and Lu Wei showed off on the offensive end, scoring consecutively, and the point difference was quickly opened up. The domestically produced shield prevented the spear of 4-8. Angzi's performance in this game was so brilliant. J.R. Smith has completely fallen into the encirclement set by Angzi alone. The super scorer in the first two games was so misfired. At the end of the first half, the Magic City team led by 57-33 by 24 points. The misfire of J.R. Smith made Zhejiang coach Ding Wei very annoyed, but he had nothing to do. The CBA is like this. It is not good to be a small foreign aid. At that time, no matter how you make adjustments, the team will not be able to win the game. In this way, in the midst of booze, the second half of the game continued the state of the first half. Angzi continued to defend seriously and successfully locked J.R. Smith, the CBA offensive weapon, and the game entered garbage time. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan San Buletinji. Chapter 17. In the locker room of the visiting team in the West Lake City Stadium, Angzi's smartphone broadcasts a live broadcast of an official NBA press conference. The live broadcast is related to the suspension. Angzi was wearing an ice pack, watching intently. Alliance Vice President Adam Silva appeared on the screen and walked to the middle with a press release. "Hello, Friends from the press, after 18 hours of negotiations, we announced that we have reached a final agreement with NBA player representatives. Both league representatives and player representatives have signed the agreement. The league has now officially announced that the suspension is over. Papa Papa, there was a round of applause and cheers in the screen, and an 11 also raised his right hand and clenched his fist tightly. Ren Kelly and the others, who have been onlookers, saw what Angzi looked like, and quickly understood. Ren Kelly scratched his head and asked, "An, are you going to the NBA now?" "Go to the NBA?" Angzi shook his head. He didn't know. He wanted to go to the NBA immediately, provided the Spurs sign him now. He doesn't know what attitude the Spurs are now. Although the Spurs sent a scout over, he doesn't know what the scout thinks about Angzi. In short, what Angzi has to do now is to wait and wait for news from the NBA. Once the lockout is over, if the Spurs do not send someone to Angzi to sign a contract, it means that Angzi will play in the CBA for a year or two, but Angzi will play against himself. There is still confidence in entering the NBA. It really doesn't work. I played well in the CBA this season. When I wait for the Olympics next year, I will have a wave of myself. Will the Spurs not sign themselves? In the United States, the league staff who had stayed up all night took a rest, and as far away as San Antonio, Greg Popovich had just turned off the TV and was ready to take a good rest to deal with the upcoming free market and transfer market. Just then, the phone rang. "Greg, are you asleep?" the team's general manager R.C. Buford called. "Just getting ready to go to bed. What's the matter?" Popovich squinted his eyes, his gray hair set off him, very tired at this time, and even his voice was hoarse. "There was a call from Houston, hoping to talk to us about the deal for this year's number 59 rookie." "This year's number 59 rookie? Who is that?" "China An, don't you remember it?" "Oh. He. Then just refuse. Trace has already told me that China An has the ability to play in the NBA. I also watched the video he sent back. I can sign it?" "Let's go." Robert Ford's full name, Robert Canterbury R.C. Buford. "You can get someone to contact An's agent and talk to him about the contract. He is part of my plan for the new season." Hung up the phone, Popovich rubbed his eyes vigorously, his lips moved, and muttered to himself, "The 57th overall pick in 1999 and the 59th overall pick in 2011 are very interesting." Back in the Magic City, Angzi soon received a call from Evo Clark. During the call, Evo Clark was extremely excited and shouted, An, are you there? Do you know? San Antonio contacted me. They want to sign a rookie contract with you." Angzi listened to the yelling of Evo Clark on the phone, and he laughed too. "Okay, the good news for the Spurs is here, then we will say goodbye to the teammates of Dao and the Magic City team next. And go back to the United States as soon as possible." The league has announced that the free market and transfer market will be opened at the same time on December 9th, and the preseason will start on December 14th. 2 or 3 preseason games will be held, so you have to hurry up. Maybe the Spurs have already started preseason training. An 11 nodded and agreed. After contacting Zhang Mingji, Angzi announced that he had terminated the contract with the Magic City team and immediately left for the United States. The news of Angzi rushing to the United States soon spread in China. The photos of him and Zhang Mingji appearing at the Magic capital Hongqiao Airport were taken by the media. Several major portals stated that Angzi is going to the United States and is about to sign with the Spurs. The headline reported the news. And the Basketball Pioneer, which seems to have got inside information, revealed the next day that Angzi may not have signed the Spurs, but the Rockets. The Rockets are likely to trade for Angzi's signing rights with cash and second-round picks. At this time, Angzi was already in the United States. After the plane landed in Los Angeles, Angzi and Zhang Mingji transferred to San Antonio, and finally arrived at the Spurs headquarters in the afternoon of the next day. The contract negotiations with the Spurs went smoothly. After all, Ang Zi is only a second-round rookie, and the contract amount is relatively fixed in all aspects. Therefore, a 2-year $1.8 million contract with the team option for the second year was signed. On the second day in San Antonio, the Spurs notified the major media that they would hold a press conference to sign the rookies in the afternoon. Ang Zi also got the Spurs notice. In the morning, he went to the Spurs training hall to choose his jersey number. Ang Zi chose the number 7. This number has always been regarded by Ang Zi as his lucky number. In the afternoon, in the training hall in San Antonio, before a screen with the NBA logo and the Spurs logo, the reporters with guns were already prepared. Many Chinese faces appeared among the reporters at the scene, and it seemed that they came for Ang Zi. But almost at the same time, in Houston, another city in Texas, the Rockets also held a rookie signing ceremony. There also gathered a large number of Chinese-faced reporters. They all heard the report of the domestic basketball pioneer and mistakenly believed that Ang Zi had been traded to the Rockets. Is about to sign with the Rockets. However, the Rockets' rookie signing ceremony that started earlier quickly disappointed these reporters. Only 2 rookies came out behind the calm curtain, one is the 14th rookie Marcus Morris, and the other is the second-round rookie Chandler Parsons, no Ang Zi. Then the news from San Antonio turned these reporters from disappointment to anger. Because Ang Zi appeared on the scene in San Antonio. San Antonio, Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford co-hosted the rookie signing ceremony. Kawhi Leonard, Corey Joseph, and Ang Zi appeared in sequence. Ang Zi also showed off his number 7 jersey. At the same time, R.C. Buford announced that he will sign with Ang Zi for 2 years and will play in the NBA in the new season. After the press conference, Ang Zi chatted with a few reporters from the motherland. He probably knew what happened in Houston. He was also a little bit dumbfounded. Because the signing time was very tight, Zhang Mingji and the others did not notify any reporters. Coupled with the basketball pioneers chasing after the wind, unexpectedly caused such a misunderstanding. The reporters in San Antonio were naturally very happy. They successfully interviewed Ang Zi. After signing with the Spurs, Ang Zi was very talkative. When faced with the question of what role Kylie hopes to play in the team in the new season raised by Tencent sports reporter, Ang Zi was answered like this. It's not easy to say in the new season. The Spurs, the strong team, there is no shortage of people. I signed with them, probably as a substitute, so what I want now is to stand firm here and have a certain playtime. As for other insider questions, Ang Zi did not answer all of them directly. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan San Buletinji. Chapter 18. News of Ang Zi's signing with the Spurs spread to China within a few minutes, and the fastest-moving Huipu Sports even released a short and sturdy news the moment Ang Zi appeared in the Spurs training hall. The Chinese player Ang Zi officially signed with the Spurs, and a press conference is being held in San Antonio. Huipu Sports will send you the specific live situation later. Ang Zi signed with the Spurs. This news immediately detonated the domestic fan market. After Yao Ming, the NBA is still indispensable for Chinese people. Countless fans have screened the news of Ang Zi's signing with the Spurs on Weibo. The news that Ang Zi signed with the Spurs immediately became the first place on Weibo's real-time hot search list. In addition to Weibo, there are Postbar San Antonio Spurs and soon a large number of new fans. In addition to the excitement of these fans, another statement appeared on Weibo that made Ang Zi smile. A well-known CCTV reporter Duan Ran sent a Weibo to criticize the basketball vanguard for its unprofessionalism, saying that if it weren't for the basketball vanguard's claim that Ang Zi would be traded to the Rockets by the Spurs, Houston would not have been kept in the dark. Chinese reporter. They will not miss the big news that Ang Zi signed with the Spurs, and the loss caused by this should be borne by the basketball vanguard. In this way, Duan Ran took the lead in firing the gun, and the domestic media's tearing battle began. San Antonio, Angzi has found a place to live in this small Texas city, a single apartment only 10 minutes away from the training hall. Angzi will live alone here. Angzi lives on the 19th floor of this apartment. After a simple cleaning, Angzi left the house. When I first came to San Antonio, Angzi was very curious about everything around him. There is also a family at the opposite door of the apartment, but Angzi has not seen anyone come in or out. The pink decoration on the door of the apartment makes Angzi feel that the person living inside must be a girl. After the boring speculation, Angzi ran on the streets of San Antonio. In the afternoon, the Spurs preseason training started. On the first day, the head coach Popovich would tell the newcomers about the rules of the Spurs team, so Angzi can't be late. Arrived at the Spurs training hall, where there are already threes and threes of Spurs players preparing for training. A staff member of the Spurs took Angzi to a locker in the locker room and told that this was the location of Angzi, which contained Angzi's training uniforms, and then left. An 11 opened the cabinet and saw his number 7 training uniform, took off his jacket. An 11 put on his training uniform, and then had time to look around. The locker room of the training hall is very large. The direct distance between the cabinet and the cabinet is 1 meter away. The cabinet in Angzi is probably in the northwest corner of the locker room. On the left is the same rookie Gary Neal from last year, and on the right is the team's old bird Richard Jefferson. And Tim Duncan's cabinet is 3 separate from Angzi, and Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili are farther apart. The 3 rookies of this year were evenly distributed among the crowd. Kawhi Leonard relied on Tim Duncan and Corey Joseph relied on Tony Parker. Perhaps this allocation of positions also represents a team culture, right? Soon, all the players changed their training uniforms, and the head coach Greg Popovich finally appeared. In the locker room, Greg Popovich stood in the middle of the crowd and started the preseason training. Okay friends, we meet again. You have had a long off-season. This is probably the longest off-season in NBA history. I think you guys should have had enough. Greg Popovich clapped his hands and continued, the new season is about to begin. I don't know if you have maintained your own form during the off-season. Before the test, I can only judge your situation by visual inspection. For example, Tim, you seem to be taller again. Can you tell me which heightening product you use? Greg Popovich made a joke. The locker room was full of laughter, and Tim Duncan also revealed one shy smile. And Manu, you have less hair. Did you mix with Tim during the off-season? Tony, I heard that you played in France a few professional leagues. Is it in Ligue 1? Are you going to change to play? Is football? Greg Popovich joked with those veterans, and the atmosphere within the Spurs team was confirmed by Angzi from this moment. Well, it's really good. And then, Greg Popovich finally mentioned a few new recruits. This season, the Spurs did not sign much. In addition to the 3 rookies they signed, they only signed the veteran point guard TJ on the free market. Ford. Then this year we also have a few newcomers. Come on, let's introduce yourself, don't be nervous, just start with you, China Angzi. Popovich was the first to order Angzi. Angzi froze for a moment, then stood up, scratched his head and said, hello everyone, I am Angzi, from China. I used to be a player from the University of Connecticut. I mainly play shooting guard and small forward on the court. You can call I am safe. Angzi's self-introduction was very plain, and the teammates clapped their hands, which was considered welcome. Then, Kawhi Leonard, Corey Joseph and TJ Ford all introduced themselves. After everyone had finished introducing themselves, Popovich began to emphasize the discipline of the team. The Spurs are a very disciplined team. Discipline includes the requirements of no quarreling between teammates, and the requirement of not allowing too much training in the team, etc., all for the harmony of the team. After the preseason training, Popovich organized the team's coaching staff to do physical tests for all the players to test how well each player maintained their physical condition during the off-season. In this regard, Anzi is naturally fine. 5 days ago, he had just fought J.R. Smith. However, there is no problem with Anzi, but it does not mean that the other teammates in the team have no problems. T.J. Ford, the new supporter of the Com team, has been injured all the time, and the worst one, Dewan Blair. Anzi heard Popovich's roar from a distance. Dewan, what's your point? How did you do it? I weighed another 15 kilograms in one summer. You really want to play ball anymore? Yes, Dewan Blair has weighed another 15 kilograms. This big fat man who has always been worried about his weight is miserable. Popovich coldly gave Blair a dose. Then in the afternoon, the team started warm-up training. After the training, everyone walked into the locker room sweating profusely. As soon as Anzi was about to sit down in his seat, he heard Richard Jefferson call out his name, and, "Go, help me bring the ice cubes." Anzi froze for a moment, then reacted, got up immediately, took a few ice cubes for Richard Jefferson, and brought a little bit for himself by the way. There was a bit of bruise on his leg from CBA before. Use ice cubes to apply a cold compress. As for Richard Jefferson asking himself to help get the ice cubes, Anzi also understood what was going on. It was the privilege of the old players and the only way for the rookie players. Not to mention other things, just say that Anzi knows. Adu Durant was even forced to carry a schoolbag for a primary school student during the rookie season, so he got a schoolbag dude's nickname, and Carlos Bulletin, who was still on the Jazz team. Zell once filled a rookie's car with popcorn and so on. It can be said that when rookie players enter the NBA, the first level to pass is the rectification of veteran players. It is already very good to carry bags to help fetch things, but it will be very miserable if it is serious. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen-san Bulletinji. Chapter 19. On the second day of the preseason training camp, the Spurs in the morning were still practicing their physical fitness. In the afternoon, after eating a nutritious meal, Popovich summoned all the players and prepared to start tactical training. After winning the 2007 championship, the Spurs have been playing soy sauce in the playoffs for 4 consecutive seasons. They were either easily killed by the Lakers or blocked by their state rivals, the Mavericks. Last season they were even beaten by the Grizzlies. Consecutive playoff losses gave Popovich the idea of transforming the team. Since last season, the Spurs have consciously transformed into an offensive team. Being hacked last season is actually a pain in the transition, but the regular season first record still made Popovich decide to continue to promote the team's transformation. In the locker room, Popovich took a big tactical board and began to explain the team's offensive tactics. The first set of offensive tactics, the point guard moved to the side with the ball. Popovich wrote and drew on the tactical board. From time to time, he looked up to see the reactions of all the players. Anzi felt like he had returned to the students again. Era. The big inside player receives the pass from the point guard and passes it directly to the guard who is ambushing on the other side, and then launches an attack. The second set of offensive tactics, the point guard ran to one of the 2 flanking players, and then the flanking player cut out to the top of the arc in the direction of the penalty zone to launch the remaining offensive tactics. The third set of offensive tactics, on the weak side of the pick and roll attack, the ball handler passes the ball to a wing player in front, and then the arc goes around to the other side. The wing player passes the ball to the big player near the top of the arc, and then the player passes the ball to the point guard to reorganize the offense or shoot. 3 sets of offensive tactics can derive countless offensive tactics, which can be regarded as Popovich's painstaking efforts over the past 2 years. This tactic is called motion offense in English. It is generally translated into block and cut offense in Chinese, which literally means cut in after the pick and roll. Therefore, the flanking players in this tactic are the players in the position of Angzi, and the effect is still quite large. But Angzi saw the series of tactics, but he was a little confused. The wing players cut in and out with the ball. Woko, how can I hold the ball? Before Angzi came up with a solution, Popovich announced the start of tactical training. Angzi was placed on the bench, with Gary Neal, Corey Joseph, Kawhi Leonard, and Thiago Splitter, and his opponents were Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Richard. A group of Jefferson, Danny Green, and Tim Duncan. The tactical training began, the main team first attacked and the first team defended. Angzi faced Danny Green. Because of Tim Duncan's presence, the main team used the third offensive routine for the first goal. After Tony Parker advanced to the front court, he passed the ball to Manu Ginobili, then followed an arc through Richard Jefferson's screen and came to the other side. This is the first step. At this time, it has nothing to do with Angzi on the defensive end. Then, Danny Green suddenly raised and made a cross-screening cooperation with Tim Duncan. In this way, Angzi suddenly became Tim Duncan's defender. It's not over yet. Tim Duncan continued to raise up after the cross screen. He and Tony Parker made a cross screen. At the same time, through this screen, Kawhi Leonard's help was attracted, almost instantaneously. The bench was full of people. The cross-screening of Danny Green and Tim Duncan made the bench center Thiago Splitter leave the penalty area. As a result, the penalty area was opened wide. Manu Ginobili passed the ball to Tony Parker, and Gary Neal, who originally defended Manu Ginobili, had to choose to go up. In this way, the defense of the substitute team was suddenly torn apart. Several people in the main team are old Spurs players, and they are very skilled in the application of this tactic. Tony Parker's cut made Manu Ginobili's outside line empty, and the inside line was packed with people. Next, the offensive choice is very simple. Tony Parker's back pass gave Manu Ginobili a chance to get an outside vacancy. Naturally, Manu didn't waste the opportunity. He made a two-point shot from a long distance and made a successful hit. Stop, Popovich called to a halt. Popovich was quite satisfied with the offensive drill this round. He focused on praising Tim Duncan and Danny Green for their running positions in this round. Just let the players on the field switch offensive and defensively, the substitute team switched offensive, and the main team switched off defense. Corey Joseph dribbled the ball to the front court, and somewhat at a loss, he made a two gesture, which meant that he was going to play the second tactic. Angzi's Lian suddenly suffered. The second tactic is the tactic that most needs wing players to hold the ball. Generally speaking, the three tactics are indeed the simplest tactics of the second tactic, with the fewest routines, but this tactic is a tactic that requires wing players. The tactics of continuously cutting the ball with the defender, and then the remaining players continuously arcing out, is a test for Angzi. Corey Joseph ran to Angzi with the ball as soon as he came up, and Angzi was even more troubled. This meant that he wanted to cut in second. Sure enough, Corey Joseph ran to Angzi. At this moment, the sideline suddenly roared, "N. What are you doing? At this time you should have cut out the arc." An 11 just reacted. At this time, he should have cut out the arc, and by the way, try to take away the inside defense as much as possible. But the problem is coming. When Angzi cut out, Popovich yelled. The main team has already known Angzi's movement, how could it be taken away by Angzi for defense? So the bitter Angzi quickly received a pass from Corey Joseph at the top of the arc, and he needed to cut in. With a crappy possession of the ball, Angzi had to bite the bullet and rushed into the inside. Against Danny Green's defense, the ball fell without dribbling a few steps, so there was another roar from the sidelines, "N. What's the matter with you? The ball is all the same. Are you lucky? If you are not lucky, will you slow down a little bit? A bit slower? and 11 then suddenly realized that this tactic doesn't care about speed, as long as the players can cut in. So, Angzi, who had come again, cut in with the ball again. This time his speed slowed down, but what he didn't expect was that several old fritters from the main team exchanged their eyes with each other, and then when Angzi slowly entered the penalty area, all of a sudden formed an encirclement to Angzi. Then, in the encirclement, the ball in Angzi's hand accidentally dropped. It should be said that it dropped again. And your speed is too slow. I slowed you down, not so slow. Angzi was helpless. Popovich was also angry, but there was no way. Angzi's dribble was really bad, but even if it was bad, he had to practice. So next, the bench continued to practice 3 sets of offensive routines. Angzi was also yelled at by Popovich, and Angzi spent the entire afternoon in torment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-san Buletinji. Chapter 20. In the evening, the training was over. The sweaty people took a shower in the locker room, changed their clothes and left the training hall. Angzi hesitated again and again, and finally put on the training uniform again. He wanted to train himself. Poor ball holding skills can be practiced, and Angzi knows this, and he also knows clearly that, in fact, Popovich's pass and cut tactics do not require too high a player's ability to hold the ball. The only thing is, I am afraid that the requirement is to be able to dribble the ball. But Angzi's dribble is so bad that it will inevitably drop the ball once it encounters an NBA-level confrontation. This is very embarrassing, which is equivalent to Angzi is completely incapable of holding the ball. Took a basketball, Angzi stood on the court for a while, and then reacted. He should have started. The extra training time at night is very precious. An 11 started dribbling the ball back and forth on the court, but after only a moment of effort, an 11 stopped panting. This won't work. What's the difference between this and the previous dribbling? This way, I still can't find the mistake in dribbling. An 11 still slapped the basketball on the spot, but at this moment, he is already in distress. What's the use of rushing around the court alone with the ball? Once you encounter confrontation, you still have to kneel, so how do you practice? While Angzi was thinking hard, the door of the training hall was pushed open again, and the creaking sound did not make Angzi notice. But the person who opened the door and walked in saw an 11. Huh? China-an? Are you practicing? Angzi only noticed that someone came in. It was T.J. Ford who opened the door. Angzi knew that T.J. Ford was doing restorative training in the strength room all afternoon because Ford was injured. Terence Gerald Ford, full name? Why are you here? An 11's implication is that Ford is injured. Is it also coming to practice? I'm here for extra training. Although I am injured, I can't give up my state. T.J. Ford smiled, explained, and then took the basketball to start his shooting extra practice. Angzi looked at T.J. Ford's extra training blankly. Ford's shots were very careful and the range of movements was small. Obviously, he was also concerned about his injuries. Angzi also quickly started his own extra training, dribbling. An 11's dribble made a loud noise, but it didn't have much effect, which made an 11 quite distressed. T.J. Ford, attracted by the sound of Angzi, quickly stopped his shooting training, holding his basketball and watching Angzi doing those crappy dribbling training. He suddenly thought that in the evening, his teammates were talking about afternoon tactics in the strength room. Training, it seems that this Chinese N has been dropping the ball all afternoon while holding the ball. T.J. Ford laughed, and he was fine left and right. He reached the floor, watched Angzi dribble, and carefully observed Angzi's technical movements. Seems. Is the rhythm of the dribble not very good? The movement is not very smooth, right? And the most important point, this guy. T.J. Ford smiled and shook his head. He found that Angzi was dribbling the ball with his palm. If you look closely, you can't find it? Angzi noticed that TJ Ford stopped to watch his training and watched for a long time. He stopped in embarrassment and scratched the back of his head. Terence, how is it? How do you think I need to dribble? Improve. Angzi knew that the most helpless thing about him now was that he didn't know where he was wrong. Hearing what Angzi said, TJ Ford shook his head and smiled. "And, you have too many dribbling problems, so let's do it. It happens to me that there is nothing wrong with me, let me help you fix those problems." Angzi laughed happily. "Thank you, Terence." As the number 8 show of the 03 season, TJ Ford's strength is still quite outstanding. If it were not for injuries, perhaps his name would appear in the 03 Golden Generation. TJ Ford's basic skills are very good. He is a Texan and his hometown is a small city near Houston. Allen Iverson once said that TJ Ford is the only player who can beat him with speed. And now, Angzi is about to accept TJ Ford's guidance. "And, you see, your dribbling is done with the palm of your hand. First of all, this action is wrong. It is difficult to control the basketball with your palm, so you have to learn to dribble with your fingertips." Dribble with your fingertips? And 11 suddenly realized that his dribble was wrong from the beginning. Angzi still clearly remembers that when he was a child, he was sent to a local sports school to learn basketball. The teacher who taught basketball seemed to mention fingertip dribbling, but did not emphasize this point. Perhaps from that time, Angzi's dribbling was just like wrong. Also, good ball handlers generally have a certain rhythm in their dribbling. The advantage of this is that it can effectively prevent walking, and it will also make it difficult for the defending player to intercept the ball. Rhythm. Angzi wrote down another important point. "Well, that's it. You just need to change these 2 points, and your dribbling will definitely improve." TJ Ford didn't say how much Angzi can improve, but he doesn't know how much Angzi can improve. Point: Angzi's dribble is at best an NBA average. An office upstairs in the arena, one side of the comm window is facing the court downstairs. Greg Popovich has not yet finished get off work. Together with his chief assistant Mike Budenholzer, he is preparing to study how to quickly integrate the New Jersey into tactics. After all, the season will begin in a few days. But the plan couldn't keep up with the changes, and Angzi's additional training in the arena quickly attracted their attention. "This Chinese security, it's quite hard work," Mike Budenholzer sighed. "Yes, the Chinese players are very hard-working, but his dribble really needs to be practiced. Terence teaches very well." Popovich nodded. When he saw TJ Ford teach Angzi to dribble, he nodded appreciatively again. "I heard that An's 3 points are good." "Yes, he can hit more than 95% of his open 3-pointers. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't choose him. Then I think we can add this to the new tactics to maximize An's 3-pointers." "What do you mean?" "Design a 3-pointer for An," Popovich thoughtfully. What Angzi didn't know was that because of his hard work and his extra training, the coaching staff decided to add a specific tactic to Angzi. That is to say, as a rookie who just joined the NBA, Angzi will also have its own tactics. At 8 p.m., the extra training had to end because TJ Ford had to go back to accompany his wife and son. "Thank you tonight, Terence." Before leaving, Angzi expressed his gratitude sincerely, and then followed Ford to leave the training hall.